Good morning or good afternoon, depending where you are in the world right now. But thank you everybody for joining today. My name is Johnny Conran. Contrary to what you see on your screen, I'm going to be swapping with Travis. But my name is Johnny Conran, and I'm managing partner of Joseph Mews. And it's great to be able to offer these webinars so freely these days and try and give our clients, both new clients, both potential clients and existing clients, a bit of information on how the different parts of property investment kind of work. And we pride ourselves on the fact that we guide our clients on how to get mortgages, how to rent their properties, how to furnish their properties. And so today is all about rental. It's the cornerstone of property investment, renting your property. Without that, the whole kind of the premise of why you're investing falls apart. So it's great to have Travis on board. Travis has joined us recently from 8 years within the rental market in the UK. So we're in good hands here to get some great advice on how you can rent it, particularly from overseas when you want as minimal headache as possible. So I'm going to start by a very quick introduction to who we are. I know a lot of you already know who Joseph Mews are, but for those of you that don't, we were founded originally in 2001 by the gentleman that you see on your screen there, and kind of tied in with what we're talking about today. The reason that Andy started this business was based on his own experience of buying a property overseas. And it was a pretty poor experience. He had no help with rentals, with the whole logistics of buying the property. And he said, well, surely we can make this better. So he endeavored to start a company whereby they offered a great product, but also held the customer's hand and provided a customer service kind of section to the whole process. And as I say, that leads on to where we are today. We're trying to give as much information and hold our client's hand through the process. So through our history, we've built 43 developments, over 4,000 units sold, £632 million worth of GDV. Every single development, every single one of those 43 is based in the UK. So although I'm currently sitting in Dubai at the moment, we obviously have an office in the UK. That's our head office. We have an office here. We have an office in South Africa, and we have clients all over the world. And particularly for our overseas clients, this is really important, is how am I going to rent the property when I'm 6,000 miles away from the property itself? So that's what we're going to come on to. Our business, the way that we work is we partner exclusively with developers. We offer the kind of full service to the developer, and we offer the full service to our clients. So the whole point here is that we have skin in the game, as it were. We don't just sort of market a property, and if it doesn't work, then tough luck. We partner with the developer. We obviously pay for all the distribution, and we commit financially. So if things go wrong with the development, we're not just affected reputationally, we're affected financially. And that's a big difference between us and, the majority of what you would call agents in the industry, is that we have more skin in the game. And so our due diligence on working with the best developers is really important. So if we look at that list here, you have Second are the largest developer in Yorkshire, Elevate, now currently the largest developer in Birmingham, and then obviously the likes of Knight Frank, who many of you will know, we're partners with them in the Midlands. So we take this incredibly seriously in terms of the product that we offer, and we only want the best with developers that do things properly, and that you're going to have an investment that stands the test of time, and being relevant today, that you're going to be able to rent consistently. So again, customer journey is really important, especially, as I say, for overseas. First step is, the legal process. How am I going to exchange contracts? How am I going to go through that process? Mortgages is another stage. How am I going to get a mortgage? Handover, the rentals, the management, the furniture, all of these things are handled by Joseph Mews. So we, as I say, we coordinate that through our head office in the UK, and we introduce you to the right partners that we've established over the years within all of these different areas of the business. So you constantly, even post-completion, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years after the property is complete, you still have that relationship with Joseph Mews, and we're gonna keep guiding you on not just how to manage that property, but how to grow your wealth through that property. One can lead to two, can lead to three, and before you know it, you've grown a portfolio. So that's our model, that's our incentive. It's not to sell one property, it's to help our clients build wealth through building a portfolio, and part of that is obviously the rental and management of the property. So the UK market, just to touch on briefly, this graph represents it really well. Why is the UK the most invested market in the world for foreign investment, which it is, still remains that way today? Well, it's because it's resilient and it's driven by undersupply. So the UK is famously doesn't have enough homes. So we're told we need to build 300,000 apartments a year by the government, and we're building 140 as a maximum. So, we're nowhere near where we need to be in terms of our supply, and that's compounding. It's getting worse and worse each year. So what does that mean? Well, it means simple economics, supply and demand imbalance. It means that rentals rise and demand rises, which in turn means that prices rise. So the beauty of the UK market is that it's resilient. I've seen it described as the proverbial cockroach. Whatever you do to try and kill the market, you can't. And that's, testament to that is if we look at 2008, 2009, when obviously the biggest crash in a generation. Was there a dip after that happened? Yeah, absolutely. But look at where we are now. And that says a lot. If you'd bought in the height of that before it crashed, your friends, your family, your wife, your husband, whoever might have told you, oh no, you're in trouble here. But unless you had to sell, unless it was a distressed sell, if you'd held on to it then, already now you would have nearly doubled your money. And that says it all about the UK market. It's resilient, it bounces back, and that's why it's a chosen addition to any investment portfolio, because you can rely on it. That in 12 to 15 years on average, property prices in the UK double. And so that's why we're here today and offering what we're offering. I think we've had a question in already. Just to remind you, there is a question box at the bottom. So if you do have any questions, then please do ask. This kind of just highlights what I said before: the supply and demand imbalance. It's just getting worse and worse. All of the big consultants, your Savills, JLA, are all talking about it, and the government is obviously under pressure to be able to incentivize there to be more building to address the deficit that we have. So in that sense, it's good timing in the market. We're in that position now. Interest rates are coming down. The imbalance is getting worse. So regardless of anything that you might see in the media and, the obvious sort of, talk about what's happening politically in the UK, the property market is resilient, and that's why it makes a good investment. So talking about this and seeing the effect of that, this was in the BBC recently, saying that the average home now has 25 tenants wanting to view it, which is crazy. So when you put your property on the market, 25 people wanting to view it. The whole premise of what we're doing here, as I said to you before, is it's about using somebody else's money, aka the tenant, to pay off your debt, aka your mortgage. For my own property investments, all I care about each month that I consistently have somebody living in my properties that is going to pay off my rent. Anything surplus, anything above and beyond that is a bonus, obviously, but the real reason I'm doing it is for capital growth for the future, for legacy planning for future children, for passive income for my retirement. That's why I'm doing it. But that only works if I'm consistently paying off my debt through my rental and I'm not having to put my hand in my pocket. And we won't talk about specific options today, I don't think. But if you want more details on that, let us know, because we only want to build in areas whereby the yield is high enough that you can achieve that, whereby your rental is, let's say, £1,000 a month, but your mortgage is £600 a month. And that's what we look to achieve. And the beauty of the UK, as I said, is that void periods are relatively non-existent because you have this huge undersupply. So coming on to that, you still need to tick the boxes and work with the right partners. And I think I'm now going to hand over to Travis, who is going to talk you through the rental market in the UK and what you need to look out for. As I say, any questions, please put them in the box. And if you want a one-on-one afterwards, then do let us know. And yeah, I'll hand you over to
Hi, everybody. Yes, thank you very much for the introduction, Johnny. So Johnny did touch on it. I have spent 8.5 years working in the residential letting sector of the UK property market. So that is a sector that I know very well. And I thought it'd be really good to speak to you guys about the back end of the process that is ultimately so important. That when you have that asset in the UK, coming from overseas, you have a team of lettings professionals that you can trust to take you through the whole process. So a little bit about what we'll cover today. So we're going to look into the UK rental market trends. We're going to look at locations that do well and are very driven towards maximum rents. We're going to look at letting agent marketing strategies and how, from experience, when I ran a lettings business in the UK, how we would market the property to ensure that you have a small void period. How we find and vet tenants. Again, a huge important factor to make sure that the people that are moving into your rental property are good. And they're going to stay in long term and they're going to pay the rent. They're going to look after your property, of course. We're going to discuss the success triangle, something that I created back home that is in the interest of all investors. We're going to touch on the Renters Reform Bill, which is a legislation change that's coming in 2025. So that's just going to be kind of what it means to you and a little bit of advice from myself. And then also why the UK rental market stays strong no matter what kind of happens. So firstly, what I'd like to do, guys, is ask a question. So if you wouldn't mind answering this question. So what's your biggest concern about becoming a landlord in the UK? So if you can, hopefully you see the box that's come up now. So there's answer number 1 is finding reliable tenants. Number 2 is managing the maintenance and repairs that may come with your property. Number 3 is void periods. So that's where obviously there'd be a potential period of time with no tenants. And then number 4 is legal regulations and paperwork. So if you wouldn't mind letting us know what your thoughts are there, that would be brilliant. Okay, so it looks like well, it's quite a split decision, which is great. But the 2 key areas there that it looks like you voted is legal regulations and paperwork. Really glad you've said that because today we will be discussing the Renters Reform Bill and we will be discussing legislation. And look, ultimately our job as Joseph Mews and the letting agent's job is to do that for you and hold your hand in that period to where you guys don't really need to know too much about it. When I ran a lettings team, we was in charge of that process and we took it on as our responsibility to make sure the legislation and the paperwork is always up to date. And that's why it's so important in that selecting of the letting agent. The other one is finding reliable tenants. Of course, again, a huge factor. Where Joseph Mews come into that is we target developments in the right areas where tenants are going to have the right salaries and they're going to come from the right type of employment. The letting agent's job is to then vet those tenants to make sure that the process is extremely resolute by the time you have a tenant found. Okay, so I just want to discuss the rental growth forecast over the next 4 years. So I often get asked about will rents continue rising? And the answer to that is very simple, yes. As Johnny touched on, there is a huge supply and demand problem in the UK, specifically in areas that are second and third tier cities in the country, so Derby, Birmingham, Leeds. But what you can see here is income is growing. And at the same, whenever the UK income grows, rents rise. So people are being bought out of buying the first property as a first-time professional. So what we find from a rental point of view is that more people are looking to rent, whereas the demand is not, the stock, sorry, is not growing in the way the demand is. So working on the ground in the UK from a rental point of view, we had extreme confidence that whenever a property was brought to the market, as long as it's in the right location and it's the right standard of property, we had the utmost confidence that that property would be filled. So that's a really promising factor in the UK. But not only that it would be filled, also that the rents will every single year continue to rise. So you could have a tenant move into your property and paying £1,000 a month. In 5 years' time, that same tenant could be paying £1,250, £1,300. So it's going to keep growing throughout the years. Salaries are rising, rents are rising. So what we predict over the next 4 years, as you can see, is a 17.6% growth in the UK rental market, which is, yes, really good. So, and this is kind of a statistic that I think is really good. The demand is up 41% year on year in key regional cities like Birmingham and Leeds. That is a huge number. And to see demand go up that high in such a short space of time is again, for us, really promising. Our job, of course, is to find the right asset in the right location at the right time. And the time's the important thing there. So, you mentioned these cities, we have developments in these cities. So as you can see, the demand is on that journey to increase. So this slide again is, I think it's a really good one for you guys to have a look at because there are key drivers behind the sustained growth in the rental market specifically. One of those we've mentioned 3 or 4 times now is this supply and demand. Of course, they're not building as much as they are, as much as the demand is there. So there is 25 tenants per property. So we are hugely in a position where if you get the right asset to the market, there will be interest in that property. There's a stamp duty impact, which is meaning that landlords aren't buying as frequently at the moment, which is obviously leading to less buy-to-let opportunity, which means, again, there's more demand. There's regulatory changes. So there's an EPC change that's coming in 2030. Regulation changes happen in everything, but what we can say is it's probably put people off in the wrong ways, specifically with your traditional terrace properties. So it's meant that, again, that kind of market is coming down a little bit. And then, of course, affordability trends. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that the drive is behind the growth that we're expecting in the rental market and that we're seeing every day. So, and this is really important to me because look, investing in the UK from overseas, it could be a little bit daunting, and that's what we're here for. So 67% of our UK property investors are from abroad. The reason I wanted to mention that statistic so clearly is because we are very experienced in holding your hand throughout this process. Anything that you come across throughout the point of reserving your property to moving a tenant into your property, we've dealt with hundreds of times. So we are there to support you in the whole process and make sure that this investment is not only good from the outset, but it's good after year one, it's good after year two, which I think is, really, really good statistics. So again, just to reiterate, we have full confidence that we can walk you through the whole process, and a lion's share of our UK property investors are all from overseas. So as you can see there, systems and strategies manager, we have a strict system that will support your interests. We have a wealth of relations with, every kind of panel of required people outside of the business. So yeah, again, we would walk you through the whole step-by-step process. So poll question number 2, and a pretty important one, to be honest, which is, when it comes to tenant management, would you prefer a hands-on or hands-off approach? So when I say hands-on approach, that's where you would be dealing with it. The letting agent would find you a tenant, but then you would be left to deal with the tenant. Hands-off is where you don't deal with anything at all. And you're completely passive and you're away from the whole environment of renting your property out. So if you could choose between those options, is manage everything myself, use a letting agent for most aspects, or not sure. Okay, great. That was as I expected. So the lion's share of you guys there is using a letting agent for most aspects. And there are a few that have mentioned not sure. So the benefits of using a letting agent in today's market are the highest I've ever known. Legislation changes all the time. You guys as investors, I'm sure, are very busy with your jobs, with your life. So what the job for a letting agent is to hold your hand and look after you in the best way they possibly can. So having worked for a letting agent as I did for so long, our role was to take that stress away from you. That was to completely look after your asset, and it was to catch in with you every quarter to make sure that you are understanding and in the know of what's going on with your rental property, but not feeling as if you have the burden of dealing with it yourself. So, I'll touch on this a little bit later, but I have some significant contacts in the UK in all areas of a very professional and huge lettings business that would be able to give you that confidence in a letting agent to look after your asset. So this leads me on perfectly to why work with a lettings management company. And there's a few statistics on here which are great, but just to kind of touch on a few that I think are really important. So legislation, I've mentioned legislation. There are 3 critical areas to renting your property out, which is the gas safety certificates, energy performance certificates, and electric certificate statements, EICRs. So there are huge fines if you do not comply in the regular timeframes with ensuring these documents are in place. What we would do as a letting agent over in the UK is we would take that control of that whole process. We would book somebody in when it's required per annum, and we would deal with the full legislation changes, and we would ensure that months in advance we are completely ready for any legislation change that happens. So that means you as an investor don't have to sit there and look in and read and do all the research into finding out why I need to do this or why I need to do that. That was our job as a letting agent, as a professional that would oversee your investment and look after it. Another stat on there, which I think is really good, 41% of landlords say managing tenants is the most stressful part of renting a property out. And, you know, given my own personal opinion on this is yes, it is. It's, you know, nobody wants to get that phone call on a Sunday which says, can I change the door handle? Or the light bulb's gone, you know, these crazy questions. So to take that complete stress away and that contact away, a letting agent will come in and they will manage it professionally. They will set the boundaries. They will have access to the tenants for a portal, and they will completely transform that service for you to ensure that while that property is growing in appreciation in the background, or while you're receiving your rents that's covering your mortgage, the letting agent are dealing with everything else for you. There's another one on here which I think is really good as well. You know, 81% of tenants prefer their property being managed by professionals. So what you're also given, as well as the satisfaction for yourself, the tenants are more satisfied by having a letting agent involved, and they feel more comfortable with the process. So when you look at that statistic there, what I would say to you is if you manage the property yourself in comparison to having a letting agent manage your property, the likelihood is if somebody had 2 plots to choose from, they would choose the one that's being managed by a professional. So this is a really, really good part, an important part of the process. So my background is I'm very experienced with new build properties, and we introduced several new build developments to the rental market in a short space of time. So we work very closely with the letting agents, and we advise and we speak about the best ways to market your property to make it look the most attractive online, to make sure that there's no void period at all for when that property comes to the market. So what we would do here is we would market that the letting agent that I worked for and that we would use, they market online. So Rightmove and Zoopla, the biggest platforms in the UK, they would make sure that the professional photos are looking really attractive online. The description is good. But most importantly here is we would actually advise our letting agents and instruct our letting agents to market the property 6 weeks before you complete. So when we get that notification to say you're a month, 6 weeks away from completion, we will instruct our letting agents to give them 4 to 6 weeks to find the right tenant, to ensure there's no void period in that process. And that's extremely powerful, because what that means is when you get the keys and when you complete on your property, you are moving the keys straight from the letting agent straight onto a tenant within a couple of days. And you know, again, the key here is that there's no void period, and the key is that your property is looking like a prime project and a really, really attractive prospect for a tenant. And that's a huge part in the process of renting your property. And again, to reiterate my experience and Joseph Mews, you know, we want to guide and work with letting agents on providing you the best outcome when it comes to completing on your property. So this is kind of how a letting agent would find you suitable tenants. So the letting agents that I worked for and that we use, they are all regulated. So they are part of the Connells Group, is the biggest and largest property estate agency group in the UK. So we know firsthand as Joseph Mews that we have full trust in their ability to find tenants, but also in their ability to be accredited and have that professional background behind them. You then go on to kind of the checks on a tenant, which is hugely important. So we actually had a referencing system in the UK, which connects to a tenant's internet banking. So as well as kind of finding an employment reference, a previous landlord reference, and a credit check, we would actually connect to a tenant's internet banking to find out an algorithm of their payments from their job, find out an algorithm of their rent payments to their landlord. So it's the best it's ever been in terms of pre-qualifying and making sure that by the time those references are passed, the due diligence is the best it's ever been. So the average time you can see on there to find a tenant is 7 to 14 days in the UK. Now, again, to talk a little bit from my own personal experience, I led a very large lettings branch, and we would averagely let a property between 3 and 5 days. The reason we did it faster was because of what I mentioned previously, that we would market the properties prior to a completion. We'd be proactive. So we would be speaking to employees in the city to make sure that we're finding the right standard of tenant. And we work with the letting agents that we work with. They are all in a position where they have really good relationships with local businesses. So you can see here as well, lettings database, thousands of pre-vetted tenants on there, and fully managed tenancies, yeah, 0 effort from overseas. So the success triangle is something that I brought in quite frequently when I was in the UK. So ultimately for you as an investor, you're looking at three things. You're looking for no void period, you're looking for the maximum rental income, and you're looking for high quality tenants. So if I was a darts player, I'm not very good at all, but if I was to throw a dart in the middle of that triangle, that's the exact position that you want to be in. So the job of a letting agent is to make sure that they are being proactive when they're marketing your property, to make sure there's no void period. They are being extremely vigilant when they are looking for the right tenant. So not only with the referencing checks that comes afterwards, but also pre-qualifying on that phone call, making sure they have a contract of employment, making sure they're looking long term. And the other one is maximizing your rental income. Of course, a hugely important factor is to make sure that the rents that we're achieving for you are the highest in the market. And that's why we're in an extremely good position here, because the assets and the developments that we work with are the best in the areas. So that means that part of the triangle there and getting the best rental income, that is normally the easiest one. But to give you confidence, we work with letting agents that want to ensure that these 3 points are always of huge attention. So I just now want to talk to you on if you are a UK landlord already. So if you've got a property in the UK and you've had a bad experience, or if you have heard of somebody that's had a bad experience, I want to talk you through the reasons why that may be. So number one, no trusted local agent, slow responses, poor tenant care. Yes, we've touched on this. If you have a local agent that is not trusted or is not creditable, then of course that can give a bad experience to you. Where I can counteract this point is the company that we would advise you to work with, and we've got a very good relationship with, are market leaders across nationwide in the country. So they have expert letting agents that are proven. They are market leaders in each individual location. So you have the proven track record of being good and efficient in the market. Weak vetting, missed rent, bad tenants. Again, the referencing system is hugely important. And when I worked in the UK, what we did over time was develop our referencing and make sure that we was in a position where we can say, okay, Mr. Landlord, this is a tenant situation, and you know everything about that tenant. You know how much money they're earning, what their disposable income is, how good their credit report is, any previous landlord references. So that's a huge part. And again, that's a really important factor. Wrong pricing or void periods, loss of income. I think that comes down to experience again from the letting agent. That can be a reason for it to be negative. If you've got a letting agent that's reactive or they're pricing the property wrong, that's of course going to affect your experience. Reactive management, costly last minute fixes. So again, you need a management team that are proactive. They are very good with their communication skill set to tenants, and they are engaging and prompting a resolution to any issues that may arise. Compliance errors, legal risk. We've spoke about the compliance. Your letting agent, they need to look after that. So again, that could be a huge factor. No updates, frustration and zero visibility. So a huge part of our service when I was in the UK again was our customer service to you as a landlord. So we had check-ins, and we would check in with you, and we would say, right, this is where the legislation is at in the UK at the moment. This is the current update on that those works that were required. For example, this is the update on the process with the marketing of your rental property. So that update and that proactive communication is also extremely important. So now I just want to talk you through the process really from start to finish. So I want to kind of talk you through and lead you through that process from a rental point of view. So initially what we would do is we would advise you as investment specialists here to where to buy your asset and why to buy it in that area at that time, which we can certainly go into detail on a one-to-one consultation. But then what we would do is we would partner up with a lettings agent in that area. So again, to talk from my experience, we would partner up with the Connells, Ashley Adams team, who got a proven reputation of delivering high quality results. So going back to that success triangle, this is a letting agent that would ensure that those 3 points are always matched. We would then market the property professionally. So as you can see there, that's the next step. So that's making sure the professional photos are good, make sure it's listed on Rightmove and Zoopla with a good description and a really hooking advert online. Then the lettings team would arrange the viewings. So one thing that my team would do is they would proactively reach out to their database, which had over 5,000 clients on. They would reach out to them proactively, setting the urgency. We've got this really exciting project coming up in Derby or in Birmingham. please register your interest quickly because it's going to be gone fast. So they would be arranging the viewings both on a proactive angle, but also on the angle of reacting to the leads that come from Rightmove and Zoopla. We would then go through the full vetting process, which we've spoken about. And we would also do a kind of a reassessment really on the applicants. But that vetting process is, it's coloured there differently because that is a huge part in the process of finding your tenants. And just to reiterate here, we would only, as a letting agent, you would only accept a tenant and proceed with the tenant if you are happy and 100% content with that person moving into your rental property. We never ever want you as an investor to feel forced to take somebody. Our job, when we're from a lettings point of view, is to find the right type of person to move into your rental property to where you feel 100% comfortable based on their job, based on the references, that you are happy for them to move in. We would then pass on to kind of the tenancy contracts and ensuring that the contracts are in place for a tenant to move in. We'll set the moving dates, which normally, because we're being proactive in marketing the property in advance, the moving dates are normally within 3 days of your completion. So we'd set a moving date, we'll go through the tenancy contracts with yourself and with the tenant, and they would move forwards to that point on. And then afterwards, you can see the aftercare here, which is the fully managed service. One thing I want to add to that as well is part of what I would bring to you guys from Joseph Mews is having a quarterly check-in with not only you, but the letting agent. I want to ensure that you feel as if we're not just selling you that asset, as Johnny mentioned, we're growing your wealth and we're building a portfolio. And part of my service there and my expertise with lettings is to jump on a call with yourself and with the letting agent, and let's have a chat about the rental market. Let's have a chat about the inspections that have happened on that tenancy, and let's talk about the rent and how we can increase that and when's the right time to do so. So now I would like to just quickly touch on something which is the Renters Reform Bill. So this is a legislation change that's coming in 2025. That could either be spring of this year, so very soon, but it's more likely to be around the autumn time of the year. So people came to me often and they says, wow, Renters Reform Bill, it's a big change, it's making it harder for landlords. That isn't technically true. Okay, now what this is doing is it's completely moving the accessibility to rogue landlords. Okay, so what it's ensuring is it's ensuring that a landlord is not saying to a tenant, right, we're increasing your rent by £250 per month this year. So it doesn't mean you can't increase your rent. You certainly can, but you have to do it in a formal document, which is a Section 13. So it's not affecting your ability to increase rent. It's just changing the way that it's done. It's putting it a little bit more formally in writing to protect a tenant from those rogue landlords that would have somebody in for a year and try and really increase the rent dramatically to the point where a tenant may not be able to afford it. So it's protecting a tenant's best interest there. So it's the end of Section 21. Now, people, again, had a lot of worries about that. My answer to that, having dealt with this for so long, is that is the best news for the UK property market, because even though they're scrapping the Section 21, that means that the Section 8 is much more accessible, which is a legal way of evicting a tenant. So if you have a tenant that is in rent arrears, or if you have a tenant that is damaging your property with evidence from the inspections, your ability to evict that tenant is much faster. So previously, and I'll be really quick with this point, but previously what you had to do was you had to serve a Section 21 for 2 months before you could access a Section 28 on any given opportunity, unless it was 2 months rent arrears, which is the same time frame. This time you can actually access a Section 8 quicker, which is the introduction of a lawyer and a solicitor and a legal team that would look to get the tenants out within that period of time. So again, it's not that it's going to be you can't evict tenants. It means that the process to evicting tenant is just changing slightly. ASTs is no longer going to be an AST in place. So it's an immediate periodic contract. Again, that is a really, really good thing for the rental market, because what it means is that there's more flexibility with a contract if you wanted to sell your asset in the future, or if you wanted to find a new tenant, or if you notice rent had driven dramatically, you can serve notice on a tenant and access the overall market much quicker and much easier. So again, what I would say with the Renters Reform Bill, and of course, I'm happy to answer any specific questions on this, either in the Q&A at the end or on a one-to-one consultation, but it's certainly not as scary as it looks. This is something that lettings professionals are educated on. I was over with a letting agent at the end of last year, and we was already talking about the Renters Reform Bill then. So the process is taken care of again by a letting agent. So it's nothing for you guys to worry about. So I just want to kind of talk about target areas for a strong rental return now. So what our job is at Joseph Mews is to look at the marketplace as a whole in the UK and be your specialist advisor to make sure that when you're investing in the UK, you invest in the right area at the right time. So what you can see here is that the two key factors that we look for is a development in an area that's on that upward journey. So with a redevelopment plan or with a huge increase to an employer, for two examples. We look for high yielding areas, but also areas that are going to capital appreciate faster. So Derby is on there. That's the area that I worked in, an area very close to my heart because I saw that journey start, and it's still in the very early days of developing into an area that I think is going to be an incredible destination for investors. Birmingham has significant potential. You know, the HS2 that's coming to Birmingham is going to connect Birmingham and London, the two biggest cities in England, you know, within 37 minutes. You know, incredible changes that's happening there. Leeds has the fastest growing rental yield in the country. So these are the areas that we target for you. And that is our job, to give you the best advice on the right locations. And actually we have developments in all of those areas that you can see that are circled in the better parts of the UK at the moment. So, you know, I just want to talk to you about Derby. I worked in Derby City Centre, and I want to give you a little bit of background as to why I think it's an investment hotspot. And I always describe Derby as an undiscovered gold mine. You know, Derby is the most centrally located city in the UK, which I'll show you a graph on that soon. And we actually have a development which I'll come to, but that's in Derby City Centre. So Derby's price point is pretty low at the moment, which is brilliant. You know, that access level for investors at a low point is great. But the reason I see Derby's significant growth coming is a couple of statistics for you. But one, Derby has the second highest income per person outside of London, which is a crazy statistic, because what that means for you as an investor is, you know, that tenants will always be able to afford to pay the rents. If you're growing your rent every year, they will be able to afford it, because London prices are here and Derby prices are currently down here. So the way I see it, and we saw it from a lettings point of view, and the way I'm sure you guys are seeing that here in that statistic, is the growth to get to the London prices, or get close to those London prices, is certainly there. You know, what we know as a fact is people in Derby can afford the rents. The reason that the salaries are so high there is you have Rolls-Royce, you have Bombardier, Toyota, the biggest engineering countries in the world are all headquartered in Derby City Centre. So speaking from my experience as a letting agent, is what I was able to access is customer liaison officers within these big businesses, that when a client moved from a different part of the country, we accessed those clients and we had an asset for them. So for example, if you was to invest in Derby, my lettings team in Derby, they would, before you even complete any property, they would reach out to Rolls-Royce, they would reach out to Bombardier, and they would say, we have this exciting 1-bedroom apartment coming in Derby City Centre. Do you have any clients that are relocating for a 5-6 year project into Derby towards Rolls-Royce or Bombardier? And often we would find that there would be traction there and there would be interest. So that's a huge fact. Another one is Derby's got the fastest growing economy in the UK. You know, again, a huge important point for you guys as investors. It's got the fastest growing economy. So those 2 points there, I think, are incredible factors to why to invest in Derby. So I just want to very quickly talk about a new launch that we have, which, you know, I touched on there. It's in Derby City Centre. It's called Loom House. It's a really good development, and it's actually right in Derby City Centre. So it's got a really low price point, as I mentioned, starting from £148,000. You know, a crazy low point. And as you can see, their average rental yields are 6 to 7%. Now, as this has developed since our launch, which is, you know, a new project, it's already looking more towards a 7.5%, which is great. The property and the project completes in Q1 of 2026. So again, in that time from now, for the next 6, 7, 8 months, it's going to capital appreciate because of what's happening to Derby as an area. So again, just talking about connectivity of Derby, you know, when you work in Derby City Centre, you have everything there. This particular development I've been to myself, I know exactly where it is. You walk 5 minutes to the train station, which you can see here. So this is where the development is. The train station is here. You have the Derby, which is the city centre, the shopping mall, if you like. That is only across the road. You have the bus station. So everything is so well connected. And as I mentioned, Derby is the most central located city in the UK. So your access out of Derby is incredibly good. You can get to London in 1 hour, 10 minutes on the train. You can get to Birmingham in 40 minutes on the train. You can get to Manchester in just over an hour. So the connectivity to the large cities in the country is extremely good. I just want to now show you a 2-minute video of Loomhouse. So yeah, if you want to watch this, guys, this is exactly how your product will look. It's an extremely impressive development, but I thought it'd be really good to show you a video on this. Great. So as you can see there, guys, that is an incredible specification, and the developer Elevate are an exclusive developer that we deal with and work with, and the bread and butter is in Birmingham city centre, but they have a an incredible development in Derby that I've just shown you there. But something important to us and why Elevate is so effective is that the specification that they offer is so high. So even the door handles and the finer details to your property are taken care of. They're well looked after. Elevate are one of the biggest developers in the Midlands. So having access to one of the most experienced developers and such a huge developer that is Elevate for your investment is a really, really good factor. And also, a very important one for you guys to understand exactly who's the builder of your property. So I've spoke about Derby, and the reason I've spoke about Derby in that detail is again, it's an area that I worked in for 8.5 years. So it's an area that I believe in. I see huge potential. But there are also other developments that we have, as you can see here, 30 St. Paul's, that is actually the same developer, Elevate. It's an incredibly impressive development in Birmingham. It's on the Georgian Square. If you know St. Paul's, if you know Birmingham, it's in the best location there. Chapman's Yard in Birmingham, the Halcyon in Leeds. The Halcyon's an incredible project in the fastest growing rental yielded area in the country. It's got some insane amenities with also a very low starting point. Ascot, closer to London, in a very, very attractive area, one of the best locations to live in the UK. Osborne Yard in Manchester, and also a development in Bracknell. So we do have other investment opportunities, and my job and my task is to find out what your needs are and what you're looking for, and assign them to the developers that we work with. So I would urge you guys, if you do have interest in investing into the UK property market and you want to know more specific to what we have in different locations, we can certainly arrange a one-to-one consultation to discuss these. So what we're offering to our attendees today is if you secure your investment with us, we will give you £1,000 towards your legal costs. Part of our service as Jason Mews, we want to help and make this process good and make this process a smooth experience for you. But we also want it to work financially. Okay, so we want to look back in 5-10 years and you see the property appreciating well. You see the rents driving forwards. So we're happy to offer any attendees today £1,000 towards your legal fees. We are also happy to offer you a premium discount to your management service. So due to my connections in the UK with the Connells Group, the largest and most profitable estate agency group in the UK, we can actually offer you a 4% discount on your monthly management fee with the market leaders in that area, the best letting agent proven in the country, and also VIP priority letting service. So again, due to the relationships that I have in the UK with letting agents, we would ensure that the properties are marketed prior to completion. We would ensure that the right tenants are found, and we would ensure that your property, when that completes, it's given priority and a priority over anything else to find that tenant and find that access to the right type of person. So that's a special offering from me to you today for attending the webinar. So this is just kind of what I want to touch on, what it takes to be one of my clients at Joseph Mews. So the most important part on here is to have immediate access to £50,000 within 28 days of reservation. So to briefly touch on the process, if you like a property that we have, and when we're doing the discussions with yourselves, if we have a property in, let's say in Derby, for example, that you're really interested in, we would take a £2,500 reservation fee to secure your plot. And then within 28 days, you're required to exchange on that property. Okay, so even if it's not completing until Q1 of 2026, you would need access to that 20% deposit that you would change on. So to be a Joseph Mews client, you would need access to £50,000 liquid to ensure that we can move forwards with your investment. The only other thing I would like to touch on here to be a Joseph Mews client is to have that clear motivation and to have that drive and that and strategy to make sure that you understand the benefits of the UK property market, that this is a long-term process. This is a long-term generational wealth growth. And, we will support you the whole way through. If you have that mentality and the motivation that you want to buy in the UK for the right reasons, we know that we have what you're going to be looking for. And we know that we have the processes and the strategy to make sure that that's a smooth and enjoyable process from start to finish. So the next steps, as I mentioned, so that this is myself on the right, that's kind of Johnny and Chris, and look, we'd love to speak kind of one-to-one with you guys. I mean, I've got a pop-up again there, so if you wouldn't mind, please letting me know where you're at in your investment journey. That'd be really helpful for me to understand where you're at the start. So number one is I'm ready to invest. I have the capital. So that's the £50,000 liquid capital that we spoke about. Number two is I'd like to speak to your mortgage broker about the financing options. We have some incredible connections, and one of those is Sophia from the Madewell Group, who is fantastic at what she does, and she will support you in that investing in the UK from overseas. Another one is to learn a little bit more about the UK property market. So again, I'm more than happy to jump on a call to discuss those statistics and the data behind the UK property market. And then the fourth option is just exploring for now, but keep me updated with options. So yeah, if you wouldn't mind letting me know your answers, that would be brilliant. Okay. Fantastic. Great. So now I can see there's been a few questions. So I would urge anybody that hasn't asked any questions, if you have any, please do ask them in the box down below, because that'll be really good for us to have a little bit of a session on what you guys are wanting to know. So yeah, let me just kind of go through the questions that we have here. So I have one here, which is kindly confirm the expected completion time of the following developments. One, the Halcyon, and two, Loom House. So the Halcyon and Loom House complete next year. Loom House completes in Q1 of 2026, but it is actually ahead of schedule. So if you wanted to fast track that completion slightly, then we can do so. So we can actually get that a little bit quicker, which is great. But yeah, that one is in Q1, and then the other one that you mentioned, the Halcyon, is Q3 of 2026. The next question is there any way to cover solicitor fees when suing a renter who stops paying? Yes, there is, and that's a really good question. So what letting agents will offer you is a rental legal protection insurance. So that covers any mispaid rent, full mispaid rent, and it also covers the legal costs to evict a tenant. So it's something that I would urge anybody to take. This often works out around 3% in terms of a total price. Which is, yes, it's a really, really good protection for you. How do you decide where and which zone to invest in if you want to be in the London city centre? So again, for us, we kind of target we target second and third tier cities, really. So we target areas that can commute really well into London, but it's more areas that are part of that journey of growth. Okay, so Birmingham, so Derby, so Leeds, areas that we're going to see that appreciation. Who are the top letting agencies in the UK and who can manage short and long-term lettings at competitive fees? Hopefully I answered that right at the end. But the Connells Group, and a company that I worked for, are the biggest and largest, most profitable estate agency group in the UK. And I have direct access to the team in Derby, to the team in Leeds, and to the team in Birmingham. 3 areas of our locations, but they are a national business, the best of what they do. If you do want other options, I have significant contacts and I can give you the choice of your letting agent. But due to the fact that I have a really good relationship with these agents, my advice would be to work with you on that. Seen any more that come in? So I can see, could you give me a sense of the current buy to let mortgage rates? Yeah, look, we can certainly have Sophia speak to you, and she's the mortgage expert. That's not kind of my area of expertise, so she will give you an exact understanding. Just please reach out to me and let me know that you'd like that meeting. So based on the new rental law, which might be in action implemented, what are the recommended mitigations actions to avoid issues? So again, look, with the new renters reform bill, the letting agent will lead that for you. So what they will do there is they will ensure that the rental legal protection guarantee is in place. They will ensure that the vetting process is clear. So for any tenant that has stopped paying the rent, if you have a rental legal protection insurance in place, that will protect you. So that will be a really, really good way to protect you from having that big hit on your bank account, having to pay the mortgage. That covers all your legal costs. It covers the cost to evict. So that's a huge way to kind of bypass that problem. So I can see somebody wants some information on the Loom House project. Great. Yep, of course. I can send that across to you. Any discount for cash buyers for the Derby project? Look, we certainly wouldn't rule anything out. What I would say is the project now at the price point is extremely impressive. It's a really good project in Derby, but please, speak to me after this call and let's have a chat about where we can go with that, what your expectations are. And like I said, my job is to do the best in your interests to everybody that is interested in investing in the UK. And it's something that I would love to be able to provide for you. Do you work with any international clients who have clients who want to invest in the UK? Yes, certainly, we work with clients all over the globe that invest in the UK, and we have a significant experience of delivering a very, very good asset. I think Johnny shown you on one of the first slides, 28% of our buyers repeat buy through Joseph Mews. That's something we're really proud of because that's showing that the service is smooth and it's easy and it's comfortable. Let me just see if there's any others here. So somebody's asked about annual rent increases, which is a really good question. So letting agents will increase your rent every year with the right guidance from somebody like myself as Joseph Mews. So if you were my client, what I would do is I would set up a business plan for you when that property completed, how we can increase the rent over a period of time. I would check in with those letting agents and I would check in with you as well. And I would say, right, the rental market average has gone up by 3%. So we need to increase your rent by this period per year. So our job is to have significant, is to have huge experience on the rental market and make sure that we are increasing the rent. I can see that somebody here has invested in the Printworks and would like some advice on renting the property out for sure. Let's have a conversation about that and let's kind of work out the best option for you moving forwards. I think that's me answered all the questions there. Unless anybody has any others last minute before I come to a close. Again, somebody else has asked for some more project info, great, really good. I will jump on a consultation. That is the best way to have, that's the best way to have those individual conversations, is to book a consultation with me. So Femi, I can see how to get in touch. There will be access at the end of this slide where you can book in a consultation with myself into my calendar, and we will have a really good conversation as to how we can move forwards. Okay. Fantastic. Just wanted to thank everybody for their engagement for the last hour into this webinar. Hopefully it has been of value to you guys. And look, I feel really passionate and really excited about the UK market at the moment. I genuinely believe that in the next 15 years, proven statistics from the last 15 years, your property, if you invest now, despite the noise, your property will double in value. And what my job is to make sure that this process is comfortable for you. Make sure that when I advise you on an asset in the UK, it's the right for your personal circumstances. But I don't stop there. Just to reiterate, I would introduce you to a letting agent, and I would be that professional that you can lean on and that you can work with the whole way through the process. It may be in 3 years' time that you want to reinvest. My job is to make sure that over a long period of time we can grow your generational wealth through property. So again, I really appreciate your engagement throughout this webinar, and I would urge anybody to book in a consultation with myself. That would be a one-to-one, very tailored conversation, which is between me and you, personally to your circumstances. We can discuss the UK market. We can discuss what projects we have. We can discuss potentially moving forwards with your first investment or another investment. And we can also discuss the intro side to letting agents and how we can get the best out of that. So again, thank you very much, guys. And I look forward to speaking to you all in the future.